Solo, a Star Wars story. Obviously my reviews are behind and I'm playing catch up here. In case anyone cares to know where I was actually at the Arctic Circle, in which there's no internet service. It's a good place to avoid spoilers though, while getting to really know myself. Ugh. Gotta love the thing. I did some catch up by watching Infinity War, Deadpool, and Solo, but I wanted to start my video return with Solo because this is the movie that made me understand what Star Wars fans have been complaining about ever since The Force Awakens was released. It was a displeased crowd of voices that has only continued to grow, becoming loud with The Last Jedi and culminating with this movie, Solo. So get ready for a bit of a rant before I get to the review. Just gonna say it. Disney's plan for Star Wars is failing, and Kathleen Kennedy needs to be removed from her position before she Alderans the hell out of this thing.
What?
And I'm one of the people who defended The Last Jedi upon release. I really thought it got a lot of undue hate. To some extent, I still believe that in certain aspects, but Disney is slowly eroding my will to live with these releases. After rewatching and reflecting on these Disney movies, the Star Wars blast shield falls away and you realize just how mediocre these films are. They aren't telling a great story, the focus is all over the place. All four of these movies just lean hard on nostalgia in order to get people to enjoy them. And that makes these films so surface level that they will never stand the test of time like the original three movies. And honestly, I have to say that even though I dislike the prequels, there's something to be said about their focus. Lucas had a story to tell across all three films. The execution of these movies was awful, but at least there was some consistency in it. These new films have no consistency. The Force Awakens wasn't all that original, but it set out to build a sequel foundation and it mostly succeeded in doing that. Rogue One, however, was a mess of a film with a third of the movie ending up on the cutting room floor and characters so bland they could have been replaced by emojis. Beyond a handful of scenes in the third act, that movie was more forgettable than birthdays at an Alzheimer's clinic. The Last Jedi acted like it wanted to continue the story from Force Awakens, but promptly threw out everything in favor of doing something new. It was like a reboot movie that somehow started a mere seconds after the conclusion of the first film. There is no way that J.J. Abrams' version of The Last Jedi was anything like what Rian Johnson did. While I appreciate some of the chances in the cinematography in The Last Jedi, in retrospect I think it was a bit of a train wreck that threw out everything Abrams did along with the use back to water. Disney has treated the Star Wars property like the Marvel franchise, and it can't be that. Marvel ties together different stories with unique super-powered characters and multiple genres into a single universe. There's enough variety in their films to have 2 a year or 3 a year, and it doesn't feel like overload. Star Wars has one main power, the Force. If Marvel is a fleet of cars, Star Wars is a train on rails. Star Wars is Disney's premium content offering, or rather it could be if they realize what they have. Oversaturating the theater with subpar films diminishes the brand as a whole. Every new premiere used to be a huge event. It happened once every 3 years or so, but now a Star Wars film is so common in theaters that there isn't really anything special about it. It's just another franchise that has been ran into the ground. I don't bring my political views into my film reviews because 1, people hate that, 2, I hate that, and 3, an honest review needs to avoid political or religious views in order to give it a really fair grading. However, it was obvious that current 2017 politics had been injected into The Last Jedi, and Solo to some extent. Because for whatever reason, they felt the need to make Lando pansexual now, and all these things are about as subtle as a Rancor colonoscopy. It lessens the wonder of the Star Wars universe, cheapens the escape this universe used to offer, and dates the film for future audiences. These Disney's films will not stand the test of time, and I place most of that blame on Kathleen Kennedy. She was hired into a position that she is simply not right for. If a change does not happen soon, Star Wars will only be synonymous with disappointment and mediocrity. A mighty giant fallen, gasping on a ventilator of nostalgia and bled dry one merchandise license at a time. With all that said, is Solo a Star Wars story an awful movie? No, not really. It is a perfectly acceptable film. I thought it had some good casting choices. Even Alden Ehrenreich as Solo wasn't bad for the most part. I could buy him as a young Han Solo, and that's not an easy thing to do. Chewbacca, he was awesome. I love their relationship in this movie. I also liked Emilia Clarke's relationship with Han as well. There were some other characters I enjoyed, but they were unceremoniously ditched out of the film, which was disappointing. Where Solo fails is in its inability to tell a concise story. There's so much going on and none of it gets much time to fill out. Every scene is just a segue into another action sequence. With the film jumping directly between action shots, the story takes a back seat to the action. There are like 6 big action scenes in the movie and encompasses well over half the runtime. A couple of these action scenes I did really like, but most of them have very little substance. This is something I expect from a Transformers Baygasm, not from a Star Wars film. This could have been a good movie to show how Han went from being an optimistic guy into one of the most cynical characters ever to grace the silver screen. But we never see that transformation here. As a matter of fact, the film kind of leaves you with some cliffhangers. I'm sure they had originally planned on a sequel, but that's not going to happen now. Now you're going to have to get the conclusion in a novel, a TV show, or some other kind of, medium because it bombed at the box office. I honestly think the amount of story crammed into this film, a 13-part Netflix series would have been a better approach to telling the exact same story. That is how much material was crammed into this single film. It could easily fill out a Netflix series and might have bridged the gap between Star Wars and Firefly fans, uniting them in the joy only seen in the darkest corners of fan fiction. It really could have been a fun Western sci-fi TV show. Solo is not a bad movie. It is a fun ride at times, not unlike something you might get at a badly maintained amusement park. But like a lot of the worlds at Disney World, once is enough, and I don't need to see this multiple times. Solo is a perfectly acceptable sci-fi movie, and it doesn't destroy the Star Wars universe like The Last Jedi did. Solo, a Star Wars story, gets 6 Solo Cups out of 10. Star Wars deserves better than this, and so do we.